Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great week. It is Tuesday, April 22nd, 3:20, no, not 3:24. It's 1:24 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, local time here in Aurora, Oregon, just south of Portland. We're going to do a load board video, and I'm going to try to stick to the load board because I just tried doing a load board video and I spent an hour making the video, and all we did for the entire hour was just look at the loads coming out of Portland for an hour. So I'm going to try to do better in this video so that we can look at more locations. And we're just going to kind of fly through the loads. I'm going to try to spend less time talking about the loads because I can spend an hour just talking about two or three loads. So let's look at the filters I've got set up. I'm just looking at dry van loads. And so I've set it to do all van types, which it's going to include lift gates. And I've got it set to power only. Let me show you how I do this stuff. So I just checked everything in van. Now normally I will go down here and uncheck van trailer with lift gate, which is VNLG. Another common thing that agents will do is VNL, logistics van. Where is that? Right here, this one, logistics van. Landstar agents, if they need a lift gate, a lot of times they will also select logistics van because they don't know what all the acronyms stand for. So I'm not going to bother unchecking lift gate or logistics van. We're just doing all vans. We're also doing power only, which to get power only, go into specialized and needing power only. And then I just choose everything in container because agents don't list loads correctly. A lot of times, if an agent needs a container moved, even if it's customer equipment, it's a customer chassis, customer container, technically that's a power only load. But I still see agents listing those as container loads. So if you don't select container, you're not going to see those loads. So that is generally what I choose whenever I'm doing my searches. And we're looking at Portland, 400-mile radius. This is air miles. Basically, put a dot in Portland and then draw a 400-mile circle around Portland. It's not driving miles, it's air miles. We're going to just look at things that pay a minimum of $250 a mile and a minimum of $3,000. Why do I set that as my minimum? Well, I only get about 70% of what you see on here. So $250 a mile only pays me $1.75 a mile. $3,000 loads only pay me $2,100. Almost every load that you see is going to take a minimum of 2 days. And I really try to make $1,000 a day. If I'm making less than $1,000 a day, it's not a good load. So that's the reason that I have my stuff set up like this. A minimum of $250 a mile and a minimum of $3,000. I really don't want to see anything cheaper than that. It's not worth my time. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't sometimes look at cheaper things. If I'm specifically looking for, just short runs or a dedicated run, a dedicated short lane or something like that, then I will change these numbers up. But this is just my general search. I'm not saying that you should always use these parameters. This is just my general search. Down in advanced search, another thing that I do is direct shipper. I choose yes. I only want to see contract freight. I don't like dealing with spot market crap. It's a lot of drama. If you're just starting out with Landstar, the biggest piece of it, there's so much advice that I could give you. I could spend, I have hundreds of videos where I'm basically giving advice. But if I only had 5 minutes to give you advice, my biggest piece of advice to give you would be to only haul direct customer freight. There is a massive amount of drama with spot market freight. There was some driver that does a bunch of YouTube videos. He has a small channel like me, so you might not have ever seen his channel. But he was a Prime Incorporated driver, and then he came over to Landstar. And he was after like a month or two at Landstar, he was talking about terminating his contract and going somewhere else. And it was because he was primarily hauling spot market loads. It was just constant drama. Every spot market load I've ever hauled with Landstar has been drama. So, at least at the very beginning, whenever you first start out with Landstar, only haul contract freight. And then once you get comfortable, expand out into the spot market stuff. But the spot market stuff adds a ton of drama. And you're already trying to learn all kinds of other things and figure out how Landstar works. Do the easy thing and just deal with spot market with the contract freight and don't deal with spot market. Also, whenever you're dealing with spot market loads, you're typically dealing with the bad agents at Landstar, because in order to become a Landstar agent, you have to have contract freight. You have to bring something to the table. Otherwise, Landstar won't take you on as an agent. But a lot of these agents come in with like the absolute minimum of contract freight, and they live off of reposting spot market loads. That's how they survive. They make almost all their money reposting spot market crap. These are the bottom dweller agents. So the agents listing spot market loads are usually agents you're not going to want to work with. They're not good agents. They're just out there working off of quantity, not quality. So anyway, let's get to loadboard. Otherwise, I'm going to be spending another hour just looking at Portland. So skimming through here, what do we got? We got the Dalles, Oregon, which is like 100 miles east of Portland, going to Atlanta, Georgia. If you notice, it picks up on April 22nd, delivers on the 25th, 3 days to do 2,500 miles. So what does that mean? That means it's a team load. All right, there's some drama going on in front of my truck. I can't really see. I've got a sunscreen blocking my window. I can see through a little crack in it. Let me pause this a second and see what's going on. There's a bunch of noise. All right, we're back. So, team load, paying $274 a mile, 2,500 miles. Now that is the full rate. We only get about 70% of that. So, what is that? 273? No, 274. 2.74 times 0.7, $1.91.8. We'll say $1.92. Approximately $1.92 a mile. That is horrendous for a team load. For a solo driver, that would be an okay load. That would be a solid load for a solo driver. For a team, that load is atrocious. This is the JQL agency. It's electronics. It's the Google account. And the JQL agency has some weird way that they do pricing. I don't know how in the world the JQL agency determines how to price loads. Most agencies, their contract freight is all approximately the same price. It'll pay a little bit of a premium if it's coming out of really premium markets, and it might be a little bit lower coming out of more competitive markets. But in general, it's in the same ballpark. The JQL agency, the Google account, is the only one that I've seen where the rates are just all over the place and they don't make any sense. You'll have JQL loads that pay like $1.50 a mile, and then you'll have JQL loads that pay like $4 a mile. And the pricing doesn't make any sense. Like, if they were to post a load coming out of Gresham, Oregon, which is in the Portland area, that load would be like for a solo driver would be between $3 and $3.50. I've seen them as high as $4 a mile. But for some reason, 100 miles east in the Dalles, Oregon, they price those loads really cheap. I've seen them below $2 a mile. They're incredibly cheap. 100 miles east of Portland, there's a massive price difference on the way JQL. Anyway, let's get back to the load board. Otherwise, I'm going to spend an hour talking about one load. Let's go on down through here. The next 3 loads are all the same agency, the ROR agency, and this is one of the agencies that posts these massive multi-stop loads. I think they're also driver unload. So Staten, Oregon to Lodi, California, Chiloquin, Oregon to Chula Vista, California, Staten, Oregon to Bakersfield, California. 30 extra stops, 20 extra stops, 13 extra stops. Those are extra. You have your pickup, your delivery, and then you have everything in between's extra. So 30 extra stops is 31 total deliveries. And most of the pay on these loads are stop pay. You get like $50 for every extra stop. So that's 30 times 50. What is the math on that? Is that $1,500? Just a second here. Where's get the calculator back up. 30 times 50. That's $1,500 of extra stop pay. And then a lot of times they'll have, you know what? Let's go in here and see if they've got it broken down. Let's just click on it and see if they've got it broken down. They'll have driver unload pay on top of that. So almost all the pay on the load is from the stop. The load itself pays nothing. They don't. All right, here's the accessorials. So yes, they have stop off pay and they have unloading pay. But this janky new loadboard app doesn't tell you what in the world it is. And I have told Landstar how ridiculous it is that it does not have that pay in here. That's like the primary purpose of these listings, is for me to look and see if it's worth my time to do. I need to know how much it pays in order to determine if I want to do this load. Why would they not show the pay information? I can pull up the old load board and it'll tell me all the pay information, but I don't want to bother with doing that right now. What I can tell you is that of this $4,600, $4,669.30, this $4.49 a mile, it's almost all driver unload pay and stop pay. The load itself pays next to nothing. So these ROR loads are all absolutely cheap crap. What they've done is they're not paying you any extra to do the loading and unloading and the stops. They're not paying you any extra to do that. What they're doing is they're factoring in all that extra pay that Landstar is forcing them to pay you, and they are, well, Landstar doesn't really force them to pay it, but all that extra pay that is expected, they're factoring that into the line haul. So they're not like, that's supposed to be extra. So they're supposed to pay like, $2, $2.50 a mile, whatever for the load, and then all the extra stop pay and everything is supposed to be extra. What they're doing instead is they want to pay a certain amount of money for the load, and they're paying this much in the extras, so they're reducing the amount that they're paying on the load down here. So they have like $3,000, probably somewhere in the ballpark of $3,000. Well, let's say, I don't know how much they're paying for driver unloading. I think they only pay like $25 for an unload. So let's do 30 times 25. That's $750. So 4669.3 minus $22.50. So they're paying $2,419.30 for 1,041 miles. That's $2.32 a mile on the full rate, of which we get about 70%, so that is times 0.7. So this load pays about $1.62 a mile gross to the truck. That's how you should look at these loads. So this load that's listed as $4.49 a mile is actually $2.32 a mile, and gross to the truck it pays $1.62 a mile. And then it has a whole bunch of extra pay on top of that for all the extra stops and unloading that you're going to have to do. But anyway, yeah, these ROR loads are really bad. I think I have them blocked on my load alerts. I just don't want to see this crap. And then we have Redding, California to Bellevue, Washington. This load is awesome. 600 miles, paying $5.29 a mile. if I was still in Reading, I would book that load. I kind of wish I was still in Reading because I could book that load, deliver it, and I have a load booked coming out of Anacortes, Washington, north of Seattle. That would work out perfect. I would have enough time to deliver this load before I picked up the next load. That'd be back to back amazing loads. So hindsight is 2020. I wish I could have looked into the future, and I would have booked this Reading, California to Bellevue, Washington, which this is a spot market load, but I would risk it. I would risk drama for this load. But, I don't know. Maybe if you call them and try to book the load, you'd find out that there's a whole bunch of extra crap with it, and it's not paying this rate. And this is the WNM agency, and anytime I see an agency that starts with a W, I get concerned because I've had a lot of Landstar drivers tell me there's some really, really bad agent their agency code starts with a W, and I can't remember exactly what it is. If you're a Landstar agent or if you're a Landstar driver and you know what that agency is, remind me in the comments, please. Because right now, anytime I see an agent that starts with a W, I get really concerned. But I've had people in the comments tell me about some agency that starts with a W. I should avoid them. And every time I go to the Landstar terminal to do cabs classes or whatever, everybody tells me about some agency that starts with a W that you should not do business with. And I can't remember what the agency code is. All right, and then we have this Portland to Portland load. This is another spot market load, and it's highly specialized. I've already looked at it. You have to have your own 40-foot chassis. Not a lot of people carry 40-foot chassis around with them. So that's one highly specialized part of it. It's also hazmat, that's specialized, and you have to have a TWIC, a transport worker identification card, which I have. That's specialized, and you have to have a port RFID, which I do not have. Basically, the only people who have port RFIDs are people who do a lot of port loads. But yeah, this is an extremely highly specialized load. Like you have to be highly specialized in ports to get that load. All right, now let's look at another area. So let's look in Los Angeles. And we're searching 400 miles. So, oh my goodness, this is going to pick up LA, San Diego, Vegas. It might even pick up Sacramento. Like, I can't remember how far. It's picking up Fallon, Nevada. Oh my goodness. So, this is going to pick up Reno, probably. Fallon, Nevada. I can't remember where Fallon is at. All right, so we have a whole bunch of the Moreno Valley loads. These are the Harbor Freight contract, paying mediocre rates. They're paying a premium going to Montana, but that's not enough of a premium for Montana. These rates are mediocre at best. 280 a mile, 380 a mile for Montana. And we only get about 70% of what you're seeing on here. So these are the Harbor Freight contracts are mediocre. All these Harbor Freight loads are mediocre at best. Fallon, Nevada to Anchorage, Alaska. Do not take loads to Alaska. Don't do it. You're probably going to be deadheading all the way back. This 3,000 miles to Alaska, you're probably going to be deadheading 3,000 miles back. So cut the rate in half. And you're going to be out in the middle of nowhere. I've heard that there's only like one place to fuel up on the road to Anchorage. So, like, whatever the fuel price is there, that's what you're going to have to pay, and it's probably really expensive. And if you break down, imagine the tow bill. Imagine the price that you're going to have to pay a mechanic to come out there. Like, if you have any issues come up on a trip to Alaska, like, it's going to wipe you out. Like, any profit that you had on that load, if you have any issues, it's going to wipe you out. The Alaska loads are just way too risky. And I've heard that there's so little traffic on that little bi-directional road that you have to take to Anchorage that it's really, really common for animals, large animals like moose, elk, and stuff like that, to just be standing in the middle of the road. So the likelihood that you're going to hit a large animal is really, really high. And you hit a moose, and you're going to have a mechanic come out. You're probably going to have to get towed. It's probably going to ruin your truck. It's probably going to total your truck if you hit a moose. Those things are huge. So yeah, don't do it. Don't do Alaska loads. All right, we got Phoenix, Arizona to Phoenix, Arizona. Anytime I see round trip loads like this, I get very interested because I think it might be a dedicated run. So let's click on it. The GAO agency. They have a whole bunch of these round trip loads listed. They're not paying very good rate per mile, but they're big mile runs. Let's click on one and see if they got any comments. I hate this janky new load board. It's like a whole bunch of websites integrated together. So every time you click on something, it's got to load like 100 things. There's no additional information, but it looks like the round trip is to Fort Worth, Texas. So you're going Phoenix to Fort Worth, back to Phoenix. That's a pretty sweet load. He's got these every week. Wait a second. These are team loads. I just looked. It picks up on the 2nd and it delivers on the 4th. And that's not the Fort Worth delivery. You have to go to Phoenix, Fort Worth, back to Phoenix in 2 days. 2,000 miles in 2 days. So these are team loads, which completely changes everything. This is a horrible load for a team. That the pay is just really, really cheap for teams. 263 a mile. What is that? 2.63 times 0.7, $1.84 a mile. For a team, that's just cheap. Every one of these Moreno Valley are the Harbor Freight loads. They're mediocre loads. They're not bad, they're not good, they're just mediocre. Compton, California to Abbotsford, British Columbia. Canada, 21,000 pounds, 22,000 pounds of hazmat, paying $3 a mile. Not a good load. Another Harbor Freight load, paying mediocre money. It's going to Houston, paying $2.58 a mile. So that's like $1.80 a mile. Carson, California to Wapato, Washington. There's a range of prices. So this is some spot market load that a bunch of people are bidding on, most likely. So somewhere around $3 a mile. Not a very good load. So $3 a mile pays $2.10 a mile. That's 70%. San Diego to Puyallup, Washington. Puyallup? I don't know. Words. 270 a mile. Paris, California to Grand Prairie, Texas, which is Dallas. 256, 257 a mile. Yeah, all these loads are Rialto, California to Loveland, Colorado. $3.14 a mile. Colorado is a freight dead zone. It's like going to Billings, Montana, or something like that. These are places out in the freight desert. You're gonna have to deadhead probably 500 plus miles to get a decent paying load after you deliver to someplace like Montana or Colorado. So those locations have to pay a massive premium to cover all that extra deadhead you're gonna do. Rancho Cucamonga to Prosser, Washington, $3 a mile, 298 a mile. These are not very good loads. San Bernardino to Clackamas, Oregon, 319 a mile, hazmat. I mean, these aren't horrendous loads. Like I have my search filters set up so that the only loads you see on here are profitable loads. All these loads are profitable, but some are better than others, and I haven't seen any of them that are like really good loads. Like I wouldn't book any of these loads. I haven't seen a single load on here that I would book. Let me look through here. So I can't do a team load. You know what? Let's go up here and edit the search, and let's just get rid of team loads. That's something I normally check off anyway. So, if I was desperate to get out of the Southern California area, I would take one of these Harbor Freight loads to like Shreveport. Yeah, I would take that load. I wouldn't be happy with it. Like this is a load that's going to take you almost an entire week to do. You pick it up on somewhere between the like this has a oh there's a whole bunch of these loads. So it's a 5 day load. You pick it up on the 9th, you deliver it on the 14th. All these loads are probably 5 day loads. It's only 1,500 miles. It has one extra stop. What? You usually don't have extra stops on Harbor Freight loads. Let's take a look at it. Where is the extra stop at? Marshall, Texas. That's not very far from Shreveport. So you're delivering to two different Harbor Freights. You're going to deliver to Marshall and then final in Shreveport. And if you're thinking about doing it the other way around so you can get back to Dallas, no, you can't do that. The way the trailers are loaded, you have to deliver them in a specific way. You have to deliver them in the order listed because that's the way that they're loaded. Tons and tons of these Harbor Freight loads that are paying like not very good money. Las Vegas to Pasco, Washington, hazmat. It's a light load, 10,000 pounds of hazmat. It's listed as only 905 miles, but I bet that is taking 95 across Nevada, which that I don't like driving. That should not be a a 2 lane road. It shouldn't be a bidirectional 2 lane road. That should be like a divided highway going across Nevada. People drive like maniacs on that thing. And if you take interstates, then it's going to add probably another 150 miles, maybe not 150. Yeah, probably somewhere around 100 to 150 miles to come out of Vegas and a second here. You'd have to come out of Vegas, take 15 down to the 58. Is that what this thing is? Yeah, the 58. And use the 58 to cut across to I-5 and then take I-5 all the way up. I don't even know where Pasco is at. Oh, it's Central Washington. So you'll take I-5 all the way up, then 84 over, and then the 82 up to Pasco. But that's the route that I would take. I would take I-15 over to 5 rather than take 95 up to 80. 95 is dangerous. This bidirectional road that people get really impatient on it, and it's a lot of miles. You're driving basically the entire state of Nevada on 95, almost. It's you're driving a massive distance on 95 cutting across. And it's almost all two-lane bidirectional. There's Fallon, straight east of Reno. Yeah, these are just not very good loads. Oh, here we go. Oh, I was about to say we got $5.11 a mile, $6,500. Fontana, which is the LA area, going to Blaine, Washington, 1,300 miles, but it's power only, and it's listed at 47,000 pounds, and it's machinery or machine parts. So this is most likely some piece of equipment that you're going to haul power only. Now, the 47,000 pounds could be misleading. It may not actually be like 47,000 pounds of cargo. It may be a machine that the entire weight is 47,000 pounds. So just think of it like this. How much does a fully loaded trailer weigh? Well, you can put approximately 45,000 pounds of cargo in the trailer, and then the trailer itself weighs about 15,000 pounds. Somewhere in the ballpark of like 10 to 15,000 pounds. I'm not sure exactly. So you're looking at like 50 to 60,000 pounds. Oh, wait, no, that's 55 to 60,000 pounds. So the entire trailer with cargo, maxed out, weighs about 55 to 60,000 pounds. So something listed as 47,000 pounds that you're going to be hauling power only, if that's the entire weight, that's actually a pretty light load. That's the equivalent of like 30,000 pounds of cargo approximately. I mean, it's not light, it's just like a mediocre load. Let's look and see if they have any notes to tell you what exactly it is. I'm willing to bet that it's some piece of equipment where the entire total weight of the equipment is 47,000 pounds. So that is a pretty solid load. The only negative to this load is that it's power only. So you're going to get up there to Blaine, Washington, and you're not going to have a trailer. So then you're going to have to find a trailer. But I was told by trailer utilization that Oregon, Washington, Idaho is where the majority of Landstar's trailers are at. They have tons and tons of trailers up in that area. So it should not be difficult for you to get a trailer in that area. So let's go up here and let's sort by revenue, because I don't know what in the world it's sorting by right now. It used to default to sorting by revenue, but I don't know what in the world it's sorting by now. Alaska, Alaska, Alaska. Then we have that one we were just talking about, the power only load. That's $6,500 for 1,300 miles. We have Chino, California to Orlando, Florida. It's a max weight consumer goods or appliances, 2,400, 2,500 miles, paying $252 a mile. Not a very good load. Rancho Dominguez to Cummings, Georgia. Max weight hazmat, 268 a mile, $5,850. Same load, paying a little bit less. Do I have direct shipper selected? Oh, we're looking at everything. Because usually when you see that, it means that it's a spot market load and there's multiple agents bidding on it. Because we see two of these Cummings, Georgia loads by two different agencies, and the prices are slightly different. Yeah, that's a spot market load that it's being bid on by multiple Landstar agents. Get a swig of my Sam's Choice Cola. All right, I'm just going to scroll down the list. Moreno Valley to Butte, Montana, $4.29 a mile, but it's Montana. Just cut that rate in half, basically, because of the deadhead that you're going to have to do to get your next load. A bunch of mediocre loads. And the list just keeps going on and on and on and on. We'll look at Dallas after this. There we go. That's the entire list. How big was that? 163 loads. So now let's edit. Well, now it's saying 161 loads, so 2 loads got covered. Now let's do Dallas, Texas. Exact same search, 326 loads instead of 120. 326 loads instead of 100 and was it 161 loads? So let's see what we got coming out of 400 miles around Dallas. Oh my goodness, you're getting like Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, Oklahoma City, Fort Smith, Arkansas, Amarillo, maybe even Little Rock, Arkansas, Shreveport, Louisiana. Like 400 miles around Dallas is a lot of cities. So let's sort it by revenue. All right, so very first one we have an Alaska load. I normally uncheck Alaska as a destination. It's one of the destinations that I remove because I just don't want to see them. Like I've seen Alaska loads that are paying like $8 a mile. I still wouldn't haul one. If an Alaska load paid like $100,000, yeah, maybe I might deal with it. But at the rates that they have on here, no, I'm not. I'm not even considering Alaska loads at these rates. I think at an absolute minimum, Alaska loads need to be paying $8 a mile for me to even consider taking one. All right, Laredo, Texas to Sumner, Washington. 250 a mile. Has an extra stop on it. Cheap crap. Port Allen, Louisiana to Alberta. That's is that AB? It's somewhere in Canada. I don't know what AB stands for. I think it's I can't remember which whatever it is in Canada. Medicine Hat something. $3 a mile, 298 a mile. Nope, not a good load. Rio Bravo, Texas to Bellport, New York. Max weight hazmat paying $3.06 a mile. Nope. Laredo, Texas to Bellport, New York, paying $2.92 a mile. Max weight hazmat. These are probably the exact same load. I'm guessing that Rio Bravo is really close to Laredo, and these are two different agents bidding on the same spot market load. Uh, Cotulla, Texas to Billings, Montana, $3.91 a mile. No. Caney, Kansas to Sylmar, California. Heavy hazmat, not max weight, but heavy. $3.80 a mile. That's not bad. And it's an agent that I like. The SAL agency. She is like super nice. She negotiates like really like mutually beneficial rates. They're like any rate that I've ever seen her negotiate, it's just like a happy medium for everybody. Like it's good for the customer and it's good for the driver. I've never seen her negotiate rates that are really skewed toward the customer or really skewed toward the driver. So I don't haul a lot of her stuff because I want stuff that's like way over in favor of me. But she goes very middle of the road on her rates, and her rates are usually really solid. Louisville, Texas to Sumner, Washington, 251 a mile. Man, there's a bunch of cheap crap. And here's a whole bunch more of these Laredo, Texas to Bellport, New York. A whole bunch of agencies bidding on that spot market load. That max weight hazmat going to New York. Houston going to Sydney, Montana. Whole bunch of people bidding on that load between 250 a mile and 320 a mile. More of the Laredo, Texas to Bellport, New York loads. Here's one Laredo, Texas to Long Island, New York, which is probably the exact same Laredo to Bellport load. It has all the same weight and everything. 250 a mile. And this is the lowest bid, so that Laredo to Long Island, like that is. Let's look at a map and see where Bellport, New York is at, because I'm just curious. I mean, it's a horrible load, but it looks like it's like downtown New York City. It's not downtown. Oh, yeah, it is. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, this is like. This is a place you do not want to go as a truck driver. This is one of the places I've never gone as a truck driver, and I never will go. I will not get close to New York City, Philadelphia, or Baltimore, or Washington, D.C. This entire line of cities right here, I will not get close to them. The closest I've ever been to them was this Interstate 81. I've delivered to um, Harrisburg or Mechanicsville. Where's Mechanicsville at? Right here, Mechanicsburg, not Ville. Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, I think is the closest I've ever been to those cities, which are some of the worst places to ever go as a truck driver. I have actually, like 20 years ago, I took a load to New Jersey. Where the hell is New Jersey? Um, and I was really, really surprised. I had to pay a bunch of tolls, and I had to pay a toll to come across a bridge. Um, but I was so incredibly surprised when I got into New Jersey. It was like extremely rural. Like I was thinking New Jersey was going to be this really dense metropolitan area, and the place I delivered to was like some warehouse out in a cow pasture. Like it was just nothing but like cow pastures everywhere. So I was really surprised at how rural New Jersey is. I think once you get into northern New Jersey, up near New York City, then it gets a lot more densely populated. But where I delivered to in New Jersey, which I can't remember where in the world it was at, it was a trailer load of computers back when I drove for Swift, the very first company I drove for like 20 years ago. I took a load from Northern California, 3,000-mile load all the way across the country. They told me it was a load that was a team load, that they normally only let teams haul those loads. They normally at Swift, they told me that they normally only let teams do big mileage loads like 3,000-mile loads, and they normally only let teams do high value loads, which this was a trailer load of computers. But I was threatening to quit because I was basically making less than minimum wage and I couldn't afford. Like I didn't have money to buy food. I was living on hot dogs and cereal. That was what I had in my truck to eat, and I could not afford to eat anywhere else. Like I had to only eat what I had in the truck, and I just had cereal and milk and hot dogs. That's what I lived on when I worked at Swift. And I couldn't even afford to buy more cereal, milk, and hot dogs. That's how broke I was. I was making nothing at Swift, and they gave me that load to keep me from quitting. And it's the best paying load I ever had while I was at Swift. I was only making like 20. I think I started out at 25 cents a mile at Swift. I think I was still making just. I don't think I ever moved up from 25 cents a mile. I can't remember. So 3,000 miles, 750 bucks. I got paid 750 bucks for that load. So basically it took me an entire week to do that load. So that's the best week I ever had at Swift. I made $750. Oh my god, that's it's depressing to just sit here and think about working for Swift. So yeah, that is like deep into New York City. That Laredo, Texas to New York City load, max weight hazmat going out onto Long Island. Oh my goodness. And it's only paying 250 a mile. Like who hauls that crap? Like are they actually going to be able to move that load at that price? Like that's man, why would somebody do that? Mm, I'm just seeing a bunch of bad loads. Every time I see a load that looks like it might be a little bit decent, I look at the destination and it's like Canada. This is Ontario. 394 a mile going from Fort Smith, Arkansas to Canada. So every time I see a rate that looks decent, there's something wrong with it. You know what? Let's check out Odessa Midland because I'm hoping that the fossil fuel industry picks up. I keep hearing that the fossil fuel industry is going to kick off. So here is Midland, Texas to Williston, North Dakota. Max weight hazmat, paying $3.14 a mile. Been sitting on the load board for a day. Now, one of the problems with these loads going from like Odessa, Midland, or West Texas up to Williston, North Dakota, is that there's not really like a good straight line path to Williston from those areas. But that's the way that they do the mileage. Is there are some like roads that you could take that basically take you straight from like Odessa, Midland to Williston, and that's how they determine the mileage. But there's no way that I would drive a truck on those roads. So you either have to swing out into Colorado or swing over into like Missouri. Um, you either have to take 29 or what is it, 25, to go up to Williston on interstates. So it adds a few hundred extra miles, and that $3.14 a mile, which you only get about 70% of that, that drops dramatically. So this is that's one of the things you have to take into consideration when you're looking at specific lanes. Is that if the route that you're going to take is not like straight, if you have to take a lot of extra miles to get there, the mileage that they're looking at on there, a lot of these they just do like short route miles, and they'll if it's legal for a truck to be on the road, that's the road that they're going to use to determine mileage, even if it's a road that you wouldn't drive on. If it's technically legal, then that's the road that they're going to use to determine mileage. So if you're having to drive like 200 extra miles, then all of a sudden, whenever you tack that in there, these loads don't look anywhere near as good. So let's do Midland, Texas to Williston, North Dakota. Let's see what Google Maps says about that. Let me pause this and bring it up. All right, so we got Google Maps pulled up, and this is basically a straight line from Odessa, Midland up to Williston, and it's 1,280 miles, which the load is listed as 1,272 miles. So they only pay zip code to zip code, so that this is going from the center of town to the center of town. And the way that they do their mileage is by the edge of town. That's the reason there's an 8-mile difference. But they're using this exact route to determine the mileage. This is the short route. But this is very unrealistic. Now, some of this road is realistic. This is probably not the exact route that I would take. Let's take a look at this road. Yeah, this is not the route that I would take. So let's go and do the exact route that I would take to do this load. So let's go over here to Big Springs. We'll do that. There we go. What in the hell is it doing right here? What is this janky crap? Let's stay on 87 and let's not take dirt roads. Now we're good. Now we're going to start to differ again. So now we need to come over here to Vega. Oh my goodness, Google, you're pissing me off. All right, now we're starting to look good. There we go. So far, so good. All right, what is this? No, we're not doing this crap. Oh my goodness, I swear Google will route you through somebody's backyard if it'll save you a second. All right, I think this 47 is a good cut across. So yeah, we will probably use this 47 instead of taking the 90 all the way over to the 94. We would probably use this 47 to cut across. And then the rest of the route looks decent. So that is the realistic route that I would take. To get to Williston instead of that straight line that they think I'm flying a fucking airplane. Um, that's a more realistic route that I would take to get to Williston from the Odessa Midland area, and that is 1,521 miles. So now, what's this thing paying? So 1,521 minus 1,272 is an extra 249 miles. So 4,000 divided by 1521. Now, instead of paying $3.14 a mile, this load's paying $2.63 a mile times 0.7. It's about $1.84 a mile. So that's one of the things you have to take into consideration is whenever you're looking at the rate per mile that loads pay, are those realistic miles? The absolute worst that I've ever seen was with USA Truck. Where was it at? It was down here. It was in Houston. Where's Houston at? Houston. I was over here somewhere in Houston. There was some load that picked up like over here on this side of the bay, and it delivered like over here somewhere. I can't remember. Um, it might not even been in Houston, but I'm just using this as an example. So the actual realistic miles for me to get from point A to point B was, quite a few miles. But whatever application USA Truck was using to determine mileage, and this was when I was a company driver getting paid by the mile, it was using like I don't know, a boat or something to go across the bay. It was saying that it was only like 10 miles when it was like 80 miles or something like that. And I thought, you know what, if I call up And I talk with the driver manager at USA Truck, and I explain to him what's going on. Common sense, they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, it's judging the mileage because of a ferry or something like that. You can't take a truck, the truck on that ferry. Um, so yeah, we'll give you the extra 50 miles pay." That's what I expected. What I got was that's what the system came back with. And I said, okay, well, I'm not doing the load then. There were like multiple loads at USA Truck that I refused to haul because the actual miles and the miles that they were willing to pay me were just way different. Like I've had loads that were several hundred miles difference when I was at USA Truck. So, that's something with a company driver, but as an owner operator, or if you're not running rate per mile, if you're running off the total load pay, but you're still using rate per mile to judge how good the load is, then you still need to look at it. Are those realistic miles or not? Even though you're not getting paid by the mile, you're still using the rate per mile to judge whether or not the load's any good. So you need to figure out whether those are realistic miles or not. So yeah, I just wanted to look at Odessa Midland because Odessa Midland is a huge oil and gas area. So um, I wanted to take a look at it and just see, like, is it kicking off? So I've heard that this summer the oil and gas industry is going to really kick off. So I'm taking a load to Williston. There's a load setting in Odessa Midland going to Williston. So it looks like there's a decent amount of freight starting to move toward Williston, North Dakota. And Williston is really big in the fossil fuel. I think they mainly do fracking in North Dakota, which fracking is not a good way to extract fossil fuels. Um, I live in Oklahoma City, and fracking used to be really big in Oklahoma. And when fracking got to its peak, Oklahoma became one of the most seismically active areas in the world. We had thousands of earthquakes per year. Oklahoma usually has hardly any earthquakes. It's one of the very low seismic. It's on the seismically active places. It's way down at the bottom of the list. We went from the bottom of the list to the top of the list because of fracking. And then they stopped fracking, and because there were some people that came out, and some researchers and scientists that came out and said that there is a correlation between the earthquakes and fracking. So they did some kind of moratorium on fracking because of that. And I don't think that they've ever allowed fracking to come back. Or if they allow fracking now in Oklahoma, it's very limited. It's much more regulated than it used to be. And our earthquakes plummeted whenever they stopped fracking in Oklahoma. You know what? I'm curious as to whether or not fracking is even allowed in Oklahoma right now. Let me pause it for a second. All right, so it looks like it's not banned. So I think they did ban it. There was like a moratorium for a short while, but then they allowed fracking to come back to Oklahoma. But they started regulating the industry. It was almost completely unregulated up until like 2016. But since they've started regulating it, the number of earthquakes have dropped dramatically. Like we used to have like 3.0 plus earthquakes every day, every other day in Oklahoma. Back when fracking was at its peak. So I am not completely against fracking to where it should be a 100% ban. I'm not really like 100% for or against just about anything. There's very few things that I'm like 100% in one direction. I think that fracking should be heavily regulated because of like the potential effects that it can have. Like it can cause earthquakes. It can damage water tables, and a lot of our water that we drink is actually underground. Underground reservoirs is where we get a large amount of our drinking water. That's where a large amount of the fresh water on this planet is in underground reservoirs. And if they pollute that with fracking, then like I mean, there's a anyway. Let's not make this an anti-fracking video. But I'm a very conservative person, but I don't completely agree with the left or the right on everything. There are things that I'm in the middle on, things that I'm very right, things that I'm very left, but I lean more right than anything. And I think fracking needs to be very regulated because it has the potential to cause extreme damage. So, yeah, but it's my understanding that North Dakota, most of the, like, there's massive amounts of fossil fuels in North Dakota, but it's in the shale. And until they came out with fracking, they didn't really know how to get that stuff out of the ground. But once they discovered fracking, then, like, North Dakota became a huge fossil fuel hotspot. So whenever we see the fossil fuel industry kick off, that's one of the spots that I'm watching is like how much freight is going in and out of Williston, North Dakota, because that is a huge fossil fuel spot. And Odessa Midland is another huge fossil fuel spot. That's where a lot of fossil fuel companies are out of. So you'll see a lot of fossil fuel stuff going in and out of Odessa Midland. So those are a couple of locations that I keep an eye on to kind of see how the fossil fuel industry is doing. So let's search somewhere else. What's another spot? I know that there's a bunch of people that live in Florida. Let's look at Florida. All right, Lakeland, Florida, I believe is so Lake City is in north central, and Lakeland is in central Florida. I think Lakeland is the industrial park in between Tampa and Orlando. So let's just do 75 miles and see what pulls up. So we have Lakeland going to New York. Cheektowaga, New York. 8 extra stops, $2.63 a mile. For Florida, that's not a bad load. So let's increase to 400 miles. And let me double check that Lakeland is where I think it is. Lakeland should be right here. Yeah, Lakeland. Lakeland is the major town in between Orlando and Tampa in this huge, like, industrial park area. Auburndale, Davenport, Polk City, like, tons and tons of places that I've delivered to in this Lakeland area. And then Lake City is up at the 7510 junction. Yeah, right there's Lake City. I get those two mixed up all the time. So we're looking at the right spot. We got Georgia in here, Macon, Georgia. Let's take the distance down a little bit. Let's take it down to 250 miles. We just want to see Florida. Oh, wow. So just Florida, we just have that one load. Let's try going from 250 to 300 miles. We have one more load. Albany, Georgia to New York. So let's lower the minimum revenue down to $1,000. We're still at $250 a mile. Now we have 136 loads, but let's take it down to 250 miles. 30 loads. That 50 miles gives us another 100 loads because that moves us into Georgia. So we have 30 loads and so we're still pulling in some Georgia. So Florida to Florida, Florida to Florida, Florida to New York, Georgia to Georgia, Florida to Florida, Florida to North Carolina. Yeah, almost all of these loads are Florida to Florida or Georgia to Florida. These are all a bunch of local loads. And this is something that's really weird. These are all like $1,000 loads paying like $2.50, $3 a mile. Here's one paying $5 a mile for 200 miles, Moultrie, Georgia to Savannah, Georgia. That's not Florida. This is something that I've never really encountered this in any other state, but like going to a shop or just wherever that I'm congregating around other drivers and we get to talking, Florida is one of the places where I've run into, like, it seems like every truck driver that I talk to in Florida is a Florida local driver. These are owner operators and company drivers that never leave the state of Florida. I have never been to another state in which almost everyone I've talked to, maybe I just had like, maybe it's just been some weird, like, I've just happened to encounter. Like, there are odd some circumstances like that. Maybe I just happened to encounter a lot of drivers that just drive locally in Florida. But it seems like everyone I've ever talked to, every truck driver in Florida, has just driven locally in Florida. It's almost every driver that I've talked to in Florida has told me, "Oh, I don't leave the state of Florida. I don't know." Um, almost everyone that I know of that I've talked to in Florida that's a truck driver, they just drive in Florida. They don't leave the state of Florida. I've never been to another state in which I've encountered drivers that only operate in that state. Even Southern California drivers, they typically will go to Arizona or Oregon or Washington. They typically run up and down I-5, or they go I-40 out to Phoenix. That's, those local California drivers in this LA area, the Southern California area, they typically don't stay within just the state of California. They'll run all the way up to Washington or I-40 out to Phoenix. Florida is the only state where I've ever encountered drivers that just run locally within that one state. I've never seen that in another state. It's probably like that up in the deep Northeast as well. You probably have drivers that they only operate in a very small area. There's enough freight in that small area that they don't need to go anywhere else. I've heard of people in the New York City area that's all they do is New York City. That sounds like a nightmare job to have. It's starting to get kind of toasty in here. I'm going to pause this and roll down the windows. Yeah, the truck is not running. I'm just, it's cool enough that I don't have to run the truck for air conditioning. Like last night, it got down to like 40 degrees. With the windows up and all my curtains pulled and everything, I woke up shivering in here, and it was 58 degrees in the truck last night. And I didn't bother turning on the heater because I knew as soon as the sun came up, it would warm up. So I just like bundled up in the covers, and I pulled the covers over my head, and I was just sitting there under the covers shaking because not only was it 58 degrees, I had the fan going, and it was so cold that I did not want to crawl out of the bunk and go down the ladder to turn the fan off. So I was like, no, it'll get warm in an hour. I can deal with it. I have a sleeping bag in here somewhere. It's been getting so cold at night and I don't want to, waste fuel running the heater. So it's been getting so cold at night that I've thought about busting out the sleeping bag because I just don't have enough blankets. I have a sheet, a comforter, and then I have an extra like felt blanket. It's not felt. I don't know what it is. I don't know what type of material it is. It might be felt. But it's this really soft blanket. Even with all of that, 58 degrees is still, with a fan blowing on you at 58 degrees, that's cold, even with all of that. So yeah, there's a decent amount of local loads that are mediocre at best. If you want to run around in the state of Florida or near Florida, But to get out of Florida, you're going to have to drive up to Georgia to get a load. All right, we'll do one more. Where else do we want to look at? Chicago is a really big spot. Yeah, I guess we could do Chicago. And 250 miles around Chicago is going to be a lot. 1,139 loads. I think Chicago is the biggest market on Landstar's load board. The most loads. So let's change this up to 3,000. Wow. So Dallas had, how many loads did Dallas have? 161 loads. So Chicago has about the same number of loads as the LA area with these search filters. So these are the exact, no, these are not the exact search filters because I had it set to 400 miles for Dallas. So yeah, now it's a lot closer to Dallas. It's like halfway in between Dallas and LA. 131 loads. When I jack it up to 400 miles. All right, we got another one of these really bad Alaska loads. Fenton, Missouri to Calexico, California. 256 a mile. Yay. All right, what do we got here? Indianapolis, Indiana to Commerce, Colorado. $4 a mile to go to Colorado. Not good. Oak Grove, Missouri to Salt Lake City, 380 a mile, has two extra stops on it. That's a decent load. Hillsdale, Michigan to Salt Lake City, max weight hazmat, 250 to 270 a mile. Some spot market load, a bunch of people were bidding on. Burr Ridge, Illinois to Commerce City, Colorado. Extra stop, 389 a mile, not a good load. East St. Louis, man, somebody is smoking outside my truck, and my truck is just full of cigarette smoke. Yeah, it's the guy parked right next to me. Let me just a second, I'm going to roll up my window. Yeah. The guy parked next to me, his window is like right next to my window, and his cigarette smoke is just coming. The wind is blowing straight toward me from him, and my truck is just full. It's like somebody smoking inside my truck. That's how thick it is in here. I think he heard me because when I was rolling up my window, he looked over and he put his cigarette out. Like, I'm not going to go over there and tell him that he can't smoke in his own truck, but damn, it sucks that now my truck is full of cigarette smoke. All right, what we got going on here? I don't even remember where we left off. East St. Louis to Clearwater, Florida, 360 a mile. Max weight hazmat. All right, I'm just going to skim through here and see if I see a good load. I'm seeing a lot of New York, Florida, Canada. New York, Florida, Canada. All right, here's a decent destination, Texas. Wilmington, Ohio to Harlingen, Texas, 254 a mile. Parkersburg, West Virginia to Houston, Texas, 271 a mile. These loads have been on the load board for 6 days and 5 days. God, it's just cigarette smoke is like I can taste it. It's so thick inside here. And my window was only down for a minute or so, just a couple of minutes, and that was long enough for my truck to get full of cigarette smoke. And I feel for smokers. I was a smoker for a long time. It's not easy to quit. It's addictive. It's something that's very difficult to quit. They The physical symptoms, the physical addiction of smoking only lasts for like 3 days. Whenever you quit smoking, the physical addiction is gone within about 3 days. But the mental addiction takes a long time. I thought about smoking every day after I quit smoking for at least 6 months. Right around the 6 month mark is whenever I stopped constantly thinking about it. For that entire 6 months, I was thinking, you know what, I could go back to smoking right now. Um, you know, everything that happened, I was like, man, it'd be nice to have a cigarette right now. For at least 6 months. And it took about 2 years from the time I quit smoking until I got to the point where, like, I couldn't even think about going back to smoking. It took approximately 2 years until I got to the point where I was just like, no, smoking? That's disgusting. So it's, yeah, people say it's easy to quit smoking because the physical symptoms go away in only 3 days, so you only have to make it 3 days. No, that's not the case. The mental side of it, um, the mental side of it sticks with you for 6 months to a couple of years. Like, it's really, really hard to quit smoking. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. So I feel for smokers. I still don't like them. Don't like to be around them. It's disgusting. I quit it because it was disgusting, and I don't want to be forced to deal with it. Something that I, chose not to do. But what am I supposed to tell the guy to do? Roll your windows up while you're smoking. He wants to breathe too. Um, I don't know. I probably could. I could probably force him to roll his windows up because this is a far left state, Oregon, and these blue states have really strict anti-smoking laws. Like, I think California has a law where you can't even smoke in your backyard. If the smoke goes out of your yard into your neighbor's yard, you could get like ticketed for that. And thinking about that from an outside perspective, you're like, that's crazy. But could you imagine being somebody's neighbor and they just sit on their back porch chain smoking all day long, and the wind is constantly blowing that smoke into your property, so you can't do anything in your backyard without breathing in their secondhand smoke all day, every day? Um, yeah, I can understand why you would have a law against that. Like, I have a neighbor that has dogs, and I can't do anything in my backyard because he has those corgis, and they will bark non-stop the entire time I'm in my backyard. They will just constantly bark. I just can't do anything in my backyard. It is so annoying to just sit there and like have somebody like barking just constantly at you the entire time you're in the backyard. I hate my neighbor so much. He is a nuisance neighbor. He just doesn't really care about anybody else but himself. Yeah, I'm not seeing any like great loads. There's still a lot of decent loads out there. All right, I think we'll wrap this up. We've done enough load board. I need to do some trip planning on this load that I'm picking up. Um, here it is. This is the load. What in the hell? Why in the world did the tracking go away? Let's flip them and see if that'll get the stuff to come. There it goes. Janky. All right. So I have to deadhead from Portland all the way up past Seattle. Probably, I don't know how many miles north of Seattle, but I'm going to, what is this? Anna Cortez, Washington, to a fossil fuel refinery. Picking up something. They don't know how much it weighs. It can weigh up to 43,000 pounds. On my freight bill, it says that it's 10 items. There are only 10 items. And if those 10 items are small and they weigh 43,000 pounds, then they're going to have to load them in the center of the trailer. If they load them all up the front of the trailer, I'll be overweight. So I'm hoping it's a lot lighter than 43,000 pounds. This is not the route that I'm taking. Google, what is wrong with you? What in the hell? No, I'm not going to be taking some dirt roads across Montana. And I'm undecided what I'm going to do to get up to Williston. I've taken this Highway 85 right here up to Williston before. I have not taken this like Montana 16. So I'm unfamiliar with that road. So that's something I'll figure out later, is what exactly I'm going to do to get up to Williston. If I'm going to go ahead and drive down and take the road that I'm familiar with, this Highway 85, or if I'm going to take this 16. If I take the 16, then I'll cut across right there. The 16 turns into the 200, and the 200 will cut across to the 85. That's the route that I'll take if I go that direction. That's probably what I'll end up doing, because there are several little towns along this 16. Here's an oil field services company. It has tractor trailers parked in here. Here's a town that you drive through. These towns have to receive shipments on tractor trailers. There's a Flying J truck stop. Let me check and see what the fuel price is at that Flying J truck stop. Alright, so it's $282. A little bit pricey. Looks like the cheapest fuel in that area is a Flying J that's $2.70 a gallon, and it's right here in Glendive, right here, this Flying J, $2.70 a gallon. So yeah, this 16 looks like it's a popular truck route. It has a bunch of truck stops up and down it. So yeah, that's what I'll end up doing, is I'll take the 16 up to the 200 to the 85 and take that into Williston. And then this is the place I'm delivering. Sabine Metal West Corporation. And it's hazardous waste. I'm not sure if it requires placards, but it's hazardous waste. So I have a special hazardous waste like dumping permit for North Dakota. But yeah, that looks like the route that I'm going to take, and I'll have to do my fuel planning, figure out what I'm going to do for it. The load picks up on the 24th at like 8 a.m. and delivers on, I think, the 28th. Let me pause this and look it up. Yeah, it's the 24th through the 28th, and it is only a little over 1,200 miles. That's like 2 drive shifts. So 2 drive shifts, that takes... So let's go through this real quick. I calculate drive shifts at 12 hours. You have 11 hours of drive time. Then you have to do a pre-trip and a post-trip and a 30-minute break. So pre-trip 15 minutes, post-trip 15 minutes, 30-minute break 30 minutes. That's an extra hour. So 11 hours drive time plus all the time for your pre-trip, post-trip, and 30-minute break, 12-hour drive shift. Do I do a 15-minute pre and post? No, I don't. It's more like 5 minutes. That's a myth that you have to use 15 minutes for your pre and post trip. That is something that comes from paper logs. Paper logs, you could only do things in a minimum of 15-minute increments. That's not the case with ELDs. There is no minimum amount of time that you have to do for pre-trips and post-trips. I've heard of people getting tickets because they didn't do at least 15 minutes for a pre-trip or a post-trip. And that's just a DOT officer that does not understand the rules or regulations. Most likely that's an old DOT officer that is from the back in the paper log days, or that's somebody that was taught incorrectly by somebody from the paper log days. But anyway, I do my drive shifts at 12 hours and then 10-hour breaks. So to do 2 drive shifts, you need 12 and 10, that's 22, plus 10 more, that's 32. So 32 hours is what you need to deliver this load, minimum. Realistically, you're going to want another 10-hour break, so 42 hours. So that's almost exactly 2 days, 48 hours for 2 days. So this load picks up on the 24th, and I should be in Williston on the 26th, maybe on the 25th. Late in the day on the 25th or early in the day on the 26th. Somewhere in that area is when I'll be in Williston, but it doesn't deliver until Monday on the 28th. So I'm probably going to get to Williston 2 days early, and I'll end up just camping out at the Flying J truck stop. There's 2 Flying J truck stops right here within a few miles of each other, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to... I'll read through the reviews on the one in Glendive, and I'll read through the reviews on the one... where was the other one up here? I think it was in Sydney. Yeah, right here it is. Huge parking lots. So shower is going to be my big thing. Good selection of liquor. And they have pictures of their semi truck. Is this a truck driver complimenting their liquor selection? Is this for real? No, that's a truck in the road. Yeah, that's a truck pulling out. So that's not this person. It might be a truck driver. Somebody's saying that the fuel here is bad. Can't speak for the showers. Every time I try to shower here, I get told there is an 8 to 10 hour wait. But oddly enough, only 15 trucks in the parking lot. That's 10 months ago. I should not be doing this while I'm making a video, because it'll probably take me like 20 or 30 minutes to read through all the reviews on both of these places. Unlimited hot water. So I'm guessing that the person that was told 8 to 10 hours is like probably at night, and they probably, this is a small truck stop that's off the beaten path out in the middle of nowhere. This is the one that I would prefer to stop at, because the other Flying J is right off of a major interstate. It's going to have a lot of traffic in and out of it, and this one is not. It's off the beaten path, so there's going to be hardly anything going in and or out of it. And most likely they don't have somebody cleaning the showers at night. So whenever that person was told it'd be 8 to 10 hours for a shower, that was probably when the next person was going to come on shift that was going to be cleaning the showers. They probably don't have a shower cleaner overnight or something like that. There's probably something weird about it. So this is probably the one that I'm going to stop at and stay the weekend. Yeah, that's probably what I'll end up doing. And then when I leave, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. My next load is most likely going to be out of Minneapolis. So, Highway 2 across northern North Dakota is a really nice divided highway. Goes all the way from Williston to Grand Forks. So, should I drop back down onto 94 and take that to Fargo? Or should I drive over to Grand Forks and then cut down? Decisions, decisions. It's going to be very similar driving distance. I think last time I chose to take 94 because it was during a really bad snowstorm. It was during that Arctic. It was during an Arctic blast. Can't call it that Arctic blast anymore because Arctic blasts are becoming so common. But yeah, Dickinson was a better maintained road through the snowstorm, so that's the reason I went down to Dickinson last time. It was scary getting down to Dickinson on that Highway 85 because there's some decently steep grades, some small hills that have some decent grades on them that you drive on this 85. And man, they were snow and ice covered, and it was terrifying. I was so scared that I was going to lose traction going down. I was empty leaving Williston, going down a snow and ice covered road that was a pretty steep grade. It was probably 5 or 6%, somewhere between 4 and 6%. It was a steep grade. It's terrifying. But now, this time I have the option to go on 2. But what I will probably do, I don't know, fuel is going to be a factor. If I need to get fuel after Williston, then it's going to depend on whether I get fuel on the route to go to Fargo or the route to go to Grand Forks. But I'm probably going to set in either Grand Forks or Fargo, one of those two, while I wait on my next load, because they're not too far away from Minneapolis. I don't want to get close to Minneapolis. Parking in Minneapolis is not fun. I remember last time I was there, I got fuel, and it was hard to get in and out of the truck stop just to get fuel. I got fuel over here somewhere, and man, it was a tiny little truck stop that was fairly new. And it was just overrun with people. Is it this pilot? Yep, it's this pilot right here. Yep, I remember this because this little truck parking right here is gated and it's paid. And there's almost no truck parking in here at this pilot, and it is completely overrun with locals. There's a bunch of, I'm not sure what ethnicity they are, what country they come from. Bunch of people from like India or something. Or no, I think it's Arabs. They're a bunch of people from like the Middle East that live in this area. And this truck stop is just overrun with locals. I couldn't get out of the truck stop because there were people parked in the exit right here that were loading and unloading stuff from their personal vehicles. They just parked their semis in the roadway and were loading and unloading stuff into their cars, and they were just blocking the road. And like I pulled up behind them and they just acted like I wasn't even there. I had to start honking the horn to get them to move. Like until I started honking my horn, they just didn't give a damn. But yeah, it was really hard to, the fuel lane got backed out all the way to the road where traffic was parked in the roadway waiting to pull into the place. All the parking spots were taken, and people were creatively parked everywhere, and you almost couldn't get out of the place from people just parked in the roadway. That place was an absolute nightmare to get in and out of. So I got fuel there, and then I drove down to a mom and pop truck stop that wasn't much further down the road. I was planning on going to a rest area, and then I saw the sign for the mom and pop truck stop. Oh, here's a little Quick Trip that has a decent amount of truck parking. That thing looks brand new. but the mom and pop truck stop had a huge dirt lot. This is it right here. The only thing I didn't like about it is there was some like dump trucks or something there was some local company that was parking over in this area in the dirt part of the lot, and every time they would drive in and out, it would just cause this huge cloud of dust. And my truck just got filled up with dust. It looked foggy. There was so much dust around this truck stop. But it had plenty of parking. And I was parked right down here on the pavement. But yeah, I don't want to stop at that truck stop again. I would stop at that brand new Quick Mart or whatever it was if I wanted to get close to Minneapolis while I was waiting on a load. But anyway, that's what's going on with me. I've got to do a bunch of trip planning and figure out, like, where am I going to get fuel. Fuel prices have gone up. Fuel prices have been very volatile. So prices went up, then they went down, and there have been huge jumps, like 10 cents a gallon in the course of a day or two. Up, and then 10 or 20 cents a gallon in a couple of days, going back the other direction. Right now, they're up again. To put it into some kind of perspective, when I topped off fuel in Amarillo, okay, whenever I first got to Amarillo on my first load that I delivered in Amarillo, fuel was, I think, $2.41 a gallon. Yeah, I think it was $2.41 a gallon. And then they announced the tariffs, and fuel immediately shot up to $2.52 a gallon. And then a couple of days later, fuel dropped down to $2.31 a gallon. And then when I picked up the Dallas load and I drove back through Amarillo, like a week later, fuel was down to $2.27 a gallon. And now let's see what fuel is in Amarillo. Now it's $2.37 a gallon. So yeah, fuel is just bouncing around all over the place. And now the TA is a penny a gallon cheaper than the Flying J in Amarillo. It's $2.36 at the TA, $2.37 at the Flying J. That's another thing that's happening with the volatility, is that the cheapest place is fluctuating. It's fluctuating back and forth between TA Petro and Pilot Flying J. Love's has become like non-competitive. Last year, you could basically use whichever of the three majors you wanted. You could use Pilot Flying J, TA Petro, or Love's, and there wasn't a huge difference between any of them. You were talking about like maybe 5 cents a gallon at the cheapest places. Now, TA Petro and Pilot Flying J are competitive, but Love's isn't. And we're still getting really big discounts at Love's, like $1 a gallon discounts at Love's. We're not down to we used to have a flat rate of like 20 cents a gallon discount at Love's. We have a variable rate discount at Love's, but it's just not competitive with TA Petro, Pilot Flying J. Let me pull that back up and just give you an idea of the differences. So let's go back to Amarillo. We'll use that as our base. So $2.36 at TA, $2.37 at Pilot Flying J, $2.48 at Love's. And let's look at that Love's. Let's see how big the discount is at Love's. 66 cents a gallon. Petro, 81 cents a gallon. Flying J, 78 cents a gallon. Is there a Love's that's cheaper? Nope, 262. 262. Yeah, that Love's at 248 a gallon is a lot cheaper than the other Love's in the area. Let's go back down to the Love's in Memphis. We had $1 a gallon discount. It's $2.66 a gallon at the Love's in Memphis, and our discount there is 88 cents a gallon. Our discount at that Love's is more than all the other places, but their pump price is so insanely high that it's like 30 cents a gallon more expensive after discount than the other places. So yeah, Love's just isn't competitive. I'm not going to pay, 10, 15 cents a gallon extra just because, I like that reward program. No, it's not worth it. Like, you're going to save enough money that you can, have money to spend outside of their reward. You just buy showers with the money that you save. So yeah, Pilot Flying J has a decent rewards program. The only thing I really don't like about Pilot Flying J reward program is shops. Like, I get points for shops. Like, even if Landstar pays for something, if Landstar pays $5,000 to have something done on the trailer, I get the points for that. So Love's has the best reward program because they have their own shops, whereas Pilot Flying J doesn't have their own shops. So you don't get any shop points. So I still have a lot of points at TA Petro because that's where I put all the trailers and my tractor into the shop. So I get points at the shop from TA Petro. And I get points at Pilot Flying J from fueling here. So I don't know. I'm torn between Pilot Flying J and TA Petro. I'm thinking about switching back to TA Petro. I don't fuel enough to get like shower power, the unlimited showers. I've tried to, get shower power, and I don't drive that much. I can't get shower power. So the only other reason that I would prefer Pilot Flying J over TA Petro is that the shower credits last for 10 days. Whereas TA Petro, they expire after 7 days. And I think at TA Petro, you have to put in like 65 or 70 gallons to get a shower credit. Whereas Pilot Flying J, it's only 50. So right now, I'm still sticking with Pilot Flying J. But the main reason that I choose the truck stop that I do is showers. Well, price is number one. That price is number one. But if they're competitively priced, they're within a penny a gallon or 5 cents a gallon of each other. Even if it was 5 cents a gallon, if there was a consistent 5 cent per gallon difference between them, then I would just go with the cheaper one. But Pilot Flying J and TA Petro, one's, they go back and forth on who's cheaper, and they're usually within a penny a gallon of each other. So it doesn't really matter which one you go with. And Pilot Flying J has the better showers. They last longer, and you don't need as much fuel to get them. So, and their point system is better. I think some of the Pilot Flying J's we get a lot of points, but there's not many of those Pilot Flying J's. I think it's the corporate owned ones. We get like 5 times or 10 times points at those, but almost all of them are franchises. But anyway, let's wrap up this video. Skim through this real quick. Did I already go through this whole list? It's a bunch of mediocre freight is what it is. So, oh my goodness, almost 2 hours. All right, we're wrapping this up. Sorry I didn't do as many like load board. I spent a lot of time doing other things. And for those of you who just want to look at the load board, I'm sorry that you didn't get to see more load board. And but I do have other people that like to hear me talking about stuff, so they listen to it like a podcast. So a little bit in here for everybody. So hope you're having a great week. And one last thing I will say is that the tariffs, even though I'm in favor of fixing our trade imbalances, it's a national security issue. It's an issue for the future of our country. It's a huge problem that needs to be addressed, and we've been kicking the can down the road for decades. So it's a problem that it's going to be hard to fix. It's going to be challenging. There's going to be a lot of negativity associated with it. So I'm in favor of it, even though I know it's going to be hard. A lot of people are going to lose jobs. A lot of people are going to go out of business. But it needs to happen. I might even be one of the people that goes out of business. Who knows? But it still needs to happen. And I am in favor of it. And things are going to get really, really rough. It's a fluid situation. Things are changing from day to day. But I can't remember the exact number. I think it's like 40% of our imports come from China. It's something crazy like that. We have extremely disproportionate trade with China. We have way too much dependency on China, and China is considered to be one of our main adversaries, and we are extremely dependent on them. Do you have any idea how dumb that is? How much of a national security issue that is? If we went to war with China, it would cripple us. If we had trade just completely stop with China, it would cripple us. Like what we're having right now with these tariffs is like a little taste of what it would be like if trade completely stopped between us and China. So, yeah, this needs to happen, but it's going to be bad. We could sign a trade deal right now. Like, it could be happening while I'm talking. And things could change very quickly. But if things keep going the way they're going, I think it's something like 40% of our imports come from China. That is going to be a massive reduction in the amount of freight moving around this country. Now, eventually, systems will shift over, but that takes time. In the short term, we're going to lose a lot of freight. And that's not just port freight. Where does freight go when it leaves a port? Well, you have a port worker that takes the container to a warehouse or a rail yard, and the rail yard takes it to some other city, and then another person takes the container to a warehouse. It eventually makes its way to a warehouse. And then from that warehouse, it gets cross-docked onto a regular trailer. And that regular trailer will usually take it somewhere. And then it'll get repackaged, and then it'll go somewhere else to a distribution center. And then another local driver will take it from the distribution center directly to a retail store. So from the time something gets to the port until it makes it to a retail, like a consumer, there's usually 3 or 4 truck drivers, 3 or 4 different loads involved with moving that product from the port to the consumer. There's usually several loads for each item that comes in from the port. So it's not just port freight that's going to be affected, it's everything. This is going to trickle down through the entire freight system, the entire retail system, the entire economy. So I've already seen the impacts. I saw the impacts like the next day, the day after the tariffs went into effect with China. Rates immediately started going down, and volume immediately started dropping. There were shipments that were on their way to the United States that were being canceled en route. So it's going to get bad if we continue going down this path. Hopefully, the fossil fuel industry kicks up and it drives fuel prices down, and we see a lot more freight moving because of the fossil fuel industry. Hopefully, a lot of manufacturing starts moving back to the country, and we'll start to see a lot of freight based around that. But we could also see a trade war happen between the United States and OPEC. The last time that we started drilling a lot of oil in this country, OPEC went to war with us. They started pumping out oil like crazy to drive the prices down to nothing, to drive all of the U.S. producers out of business. That's the reason we started seeing really, really cheap fuel last time that Trump was in office, was because we started pumping oil like crazy, and OPEC drove the prices down to nothing to try to drive these U.S. companies out of business. I don't think Trump will allow that this time. I think Trump, if OPEC tries to do that this time, what I think will happen is Trump will put some kind of tariff on OPEC imports of oil, so that they can maintain price stability in the United States. And who knows, he might get other countries to put tariffs on OPEC oil and gas imports. Who knows what's going to happen? But the point I'm trying to make is, I don't think we're going to see like $1 a gallon fuel. I think that OPEC is going to fight against that, and we're probably going to have some type of price controls put into effect so that OPEC can't put U.S. oil and gas companies out of business. But anyway, that's a whole other video talking about all of that stuff. The general point that I'm trying to make is that things have very quickly started getting bad in the freight market with the tariffs, and they're going to continue to get worse until something changes with the tariffs, or we shift and start moving manufacturing to other countries. So, and that's going to take time. So what I'm trying to say is, be prepared for rough times. We're already in a rough time, but it's looking like it's going to get a lot worse. But at the same time, we could sign a bunch of new trade deals and things could get a lot better real quick. Who knows? It's a very fluid situation. But have a good one. Bye.